Ladies and gentlemen, if this is my time to die, it's been a good run. Yeah, let's talk about the abortion. Ooh, this is gonna go so poorly. All right. So this video is already screwed from the very beginning because I am a male and men aren't supposed to have any say in abortions in one way or the other. But it's also talking about recent news of Roe v. Wade being overturned and people losing their motherfucking minds. So let's just talk for a bit and see how this goes. So the Roe v. Wade and abortion are one of those things that they're not necessarily the same thing, but they interconnect. So they're kind of essentially in the same boat, even though they're going in two different paths. One might say. So here's the problem. The problem is that Roe v. Wade was a terrible case. It was a terrible case, and it was pretty early on admitted by Roe herself on television that she was never like sexually assaulted or raped, even though this case would become one of the defining cases of abortion. Like this is that case. And so what it turned it took the issue of abortion and took it away from the states and said, well, now the government just says that anyone should be allowed to have an abortion. You should be allowed the right to have an abortion. And it's funny because over recent years you've been hearing from many people who are just like, I'm tired of the government having their hands in everything we fucking do. So what overturning Roe v. Wade does not abolish abortion. I want that to be stated. The reason why it's considered dangerous is because it returns abortion laws back to the states, meaning the states would then dictate whether or not abortions were allowed or not, and if they were, under what context. Like what's the basis in which abortions are allowed. And so when it was overturned, it went back to the state. So each individual state got to pick whether or not they allowed abortions. Essentially became kind of like in the same position the weed situation is, where like a state picks whether or not that weed is legalized in that state. It's the same shit here. Whether or not abortion is legal in what state. So overturning Roe v. Wade, all it did is go, hey Georgia, you want to make your laws about abortion again? Here you go. Texas, Missouri, fucking New York, Nevada, New Jersey, North and South Dakota, all you fuckers, Washington, California, you can all make Kentucky, you can all make your decision. Wyoming, no one ever brings up Wyoming anymore. Don't worry about it. We forget it all the time. You all can make your decisions about how you want to handle abortion in your respective states. Now, I am a person who agrees with the sentiment that if it's sexual assault, if it's incest, if it's a medical emergency that is threatening the life of the mother, abortion should be allowed. And I guess the current issue is that some states, like I think, and it's always the ones that are stereotypical as fuck. I think it's like Texas, and I think it's like Missouri, and I think it's like Alabama, and I think it's like fucking, and weirdly like North and South Dakota, which you wouldn't think would come up in that conversation. But I think those are the ones that just said, fuck it, you can't get an abortion, period. Like, at least, like, give me an example. I live in Georgia. Georgia, at least, was like, if you were sexually assaulted, or if you were like, or if it was a product of incest, something like, if it was like a medical emergency, sure, abortions are allowed. That was Georgia's rule. And then you had some places like fucking California was like, abortion, pro-choice is the way to go over here in Cali land. So I agree. I could see people getting angry at states like Texas and shit that were like, no, because I'm like, sexual assault, I think I'm not necessarily happy about it, but I also think it's a little bit worse to have a mother carry a baby that not only that she doesn't want, but is a constant reminder of a horrific event in her mind. And that woman will not be fit to be a mother in any way, shape, or form. This is the reality of it. And I have my reservations about that, but like I could completely understand. Yeah, that abortion probably needs to happen. Sexual assault Yes, incest definitely. There's a bunch of medical issues with incest that you just also the fact that in most states, I say most because there's a couple where it's not. In most states, incest is illegal, so it wouldn't make sense to have this baby be born, especially because incest tends to bring a whole host of other medical issues on top of it. So I can agree with people getting angry at the states that aren't even allowing that. But the conversation of whether or not this is infringing on a woman's right to her body, I find a little fucking stupid because if we're talking about most abortions, which I would say most abortions are by like women who consented to sex and then chose afterwards not to have the baby, I don't want this child, and chose to have an abortion. Why the fuck were you having unprotected? The problem is that we've gotten to this point now where women want to act like their bodies are being controlled or some shit. And I'm like, no, it wasn't what it is because at the end of the day, if you never get pregnant, this will never apply to you. Like ever. If you're a woman and you don't ever get pregnant or you ever put yourself in a position where you're pregnant and it's unwanted, that is on you as the woman. That has nothing to do with the state or the government because you chose to have sex. Now, granted, this also falls on the men. I don't want to just make it specifically about the women. The point I'm making is if you chose not to wear a condom, if you chose not to have contraceptives, if you chose not to take a fucking plan B, the point is if you chose to not do any of these things, had sex, knowing what could easily happen. Hell, there are cases of women getting pregnant without even any penetration. Just the semen coming close to those lips was enough for some women. And for some reason you're fucking surprised. You're just like, oh fuck, I'm pregnant now. I'm like, at that point, that's just you being fucking irresponsible. That's why I feel like a lot of this boils down to. Women still want to have the right to be irresponsible with their bodies and the potential life of people, and then act like that shit's okay. And I'm like, no, because if you don't want to have kids, take the like. Why is it like if I wanna buy a car, I have to recognize that I have to get insurance and that I have to deal with all the things that come with a car. And if I don't, and then I don't get to buy the car if I don't have those necessary things, right? Why in the fuck is it okay? And that's a car. That's a fucking car. We're talking about a human life here. Granted, a car is just in some ways is just as dangerous because if you fuck up on the premise of not having a license and they give you a fucking car and you don't know how to drive, you get out there, you could ruin many people's lives. I think it frustrates me because the argument, and unfortunately, it's a sad thing to acknowledge, but the sad thing about this whole situation is that the argument of whether or not you're okay with abortion kind of dulls down to one of these two things, because usually if you're one thing, we already know what side of the fence you're on. I'll give you an example. If you don't believe the thing inside a woman's belly in any point in time is a real life human being, you more likely are pro-choice. If you're someone who thinks that thing in her belly from the moment of conception is a human being and a baby, you're probably pro-life. And the cold reality is that if you, whatever stance that is you take is kind of the way you're gonna go. I don't know anyone who looks at the thing in her belly as a life and then immediately goes pro-choice. So you just gonna kill a living baby? You know why it would never work that way? Because that's essentially saying, oh, I know that's a life, but fuck that life, kill it. Kind of sounds like you're condoning a form of murder, doesn't you think? That's why most people who say they're pro-choice don't view the thing in the belly as a real life creature. Partially also because it fits your narrative. If you're someone who wants abortion to still be legal or be like government wide legal, then of course you're not gonna say some shit that would like counteract your own argument. I get it, but it doesn't make me feel any better looking at the situation. I also don't like the argument that men don't have any say in this conversation, even though where do you think the semen's coming from? It's still coming from a man. Some man. You don't just create semen out of fucking thin air. Although I've heard that there's been medical studies of trying to do things to that effect. But the point I'm making is that like we we may not be carrying the baby, but like I feel like the whole men's voices that aren't relevant in this conversation is a way to just shut out any level of criticism, because of course men would have a different mindset and approach to the conversation, and I think a lot of women don't want to hear that conversation. They rather just fucking be like, my body, my choice. But it was your choice to get pregnant. The irony of it all. It's funny that you go, my body, my choice, but it's only relevant up until the point where you're pregnant. And I'm like, but it was your choice to get pregnant. No, it wasn't. Did you have sex with a man who produced semen and neither of you wore contraceptives? Yeah. And you consented to that intercourse? Yeah. Then it was your fucking choice. So it's your choice to make a life altering decision, and then your choice to completely renege on that with no consequence. And then you got some women who had the nerve to have abortions as late as 8 months in. Who in the fuck? That's crazy. How in the fuck did you get that far? The I don't understand how you get that far in your pregnancy and go, nah. What? And at that point, would you? And then of course the conversation comes up. Well, do you view that as murder? Because most people look at that and go, at 8 months, that's pretty much almost a live baby, if not a live baby. That's troublesome at the least. What the fuck? But see, so the problem is that people want me to feel bad that now that Roe versus Wade is overturned, which by the way, that needed to go regardless. I need to be stated. Regardless, that needed to go because it was based on a lie to begin with. And as much as people want to talk about changing the shit in the history books and clearing up all these fucking misunderstandings and misconceptions and telling the truth, I think that was a big fucking lie that needed to get the fuck out of here. And y'all were like, keep it, codify it. So you really only care when the narrative suits you. That's when you care about truth, honor, and integrity. You didn't care because it benefited you, which is why no one brings up the Roe v. Wade situation up until this point. Like, what the fuck? And like, well, the Republicans have been wanting this for years. So what? To get abortion out of the hands of the government? I don't know why people wanted abortion in the hands of the government anyway, considering most young people don't trust the government. But people don't like it because of what it led to. That certain states got to make their own rules, and the state said you can't have abortions ever. Now, like I said, I don't agree with the no one can't have abortions. I feel like I said, sexual assault, incest, those things, medical complications, those are perfectly logical reasons to have an abortion. But what I'm hoping this leads to, after everyone stops losing their fucking minds and having fits in the street, hopefully this leads to is more responsible individuals. See, people are more likely to not make these stupid fucking decisions when they realize they don't have another option to get out of it. It's like, if you live in a state like fucking Texas where you literally cannot get an abortion in any context, that's the reason why I said the sexual assault thing seems kind of ridiculous, because I'm like, that's not even by choice. That's not even a consenting sexual experience. How the fuck are you gonna force them to have the baby? I get that it's a life, but I feel like that I don't know, that one. I can see where Texas is coming from, but I don't agree. I personally think that they should be allowed to have an abortion, because that's not even healthy at all. Nothing about that was healthy. But we're talking about two consenting adults in a relationship, or at least in a one night stand, and neither of them had the nerve to be like, hey, one of us should I should wear a condom. Maybe you should take a Plan B in the morning. One of these things. If no one chose to do that and you let this shit carry on until you became pregnant, you want it. I don't understand, dog. And maybe that's what it is. Maybe I need an example of a situation where a woman, and I could come up with a couple. I'll give you an example. Maybe the 8-month situation, right? The 8-month situation is a woman who initially wanted to have children. She had 2 kids and she was on her 3rd one. And she's like, yeah, I want to have a 3rd child. And then waited 8 months into the pregnancy to be like, On second thought, do I really want to do the mommy phase again? I'm like, well, you've done the majority of the fucking pregnancy at this point. I don't see why it would have been a big deal, but sure. I think making it where women can't just easily throw away a terrible decision will make them at least think twice and more responsibly about the decisions they make when it regards to sex and contraceptives. Because this was one of the first things they should have been teaching you in sex ed when schools taught sex ed properly and it didn't turn into a bunch of fucking gender politics or whatever the fuck. Be fucking smart if you're gonna have sex because there are plenty of women who have fucked around for a good portion of time and never even had a pregnancy scare. So how the fuck are those women doing it? But Sally down the street can't even only fucks two guys and all of a sudden is pregnant with twins. Like what the fuck? Just take a damn contraceptive. I don't understand, and I don't understand why people want abortion back in the hands of the government. Especially under this ridiculous lie that is Roe v. Wade. Like, what the and I'm gonna get shit for this. I already knew it. I knew as soon as I realized that being a man and talking about abortion, I already hoed myself. But I just genuinely can't get myself to feel bad for women whose complaint currently is, boo, now I gotta be responsible with my body when it comes to housing. Also, I'm not even pro-life completely, and I would still say calling a child a parasite is one of the most disgusting things you can call a child for no reason. But once again, it's that dehumanizing thing. Because my argument is for people to have the option to have abortions, I have to then devalue the life of, because let's be real here, if it wasn't because of the abortion argument, I think people would be fine calling what's in a woman's belly alive and a person. But they won't do it because your argument is based upon the idea of that not being a real person. Otherwise, you're essentially saying, well, I'm cool with murdering a child in the womb. I hate that it's so tightly together. It's not even a funny mystery to unravel. I'm not Sherlock Holmes here. I'm literally like, well, you want women to have the right to have abortions. To do that, you have to then dehumanize babies in the womb, because if you don't, it's essentially admitting that you are perfectly cool with child murder. And then it's like, bing, this is why I'm pro-choice. And I'm like, good God. So I guess my main core points, because I don't want to roll this out any longer, we're getting almost into 20 minutes, is that Roe v. Wade needed to go regardless. That's something that should have gone years ago. And B, women need to be more fucking responsible about their sexual experiences. Men too. Don't ever get it twisted. Because men, some of you motherfuckers don't wrap it up. I'm like, I don't like how I feel comfortable. Bitch, are you having a baby? Because now it's going to be hard to get one. And three, those babies deserve to. It's crazy to me when you realize how many people here today. I actually heard this yesterday from Tyrone in our stream. He mentioned that if his mother had some extra money, she would have gotten an abortion. She just couldn't afford the abortion. The irony of it all, considering how much of a commodity abortions supposedly are, you think they wouldn't charge as much for them? I'm just playing. But the point I make, but hearing that shit from Tyrone the other night, talking about he could have been an abortion baby, it's crazy to me when you think about all the people who currently live on Earth. How many of us could have been abortion kids? What if one or two things had changed in life? But most, in not every situation, but there's a lot of parents who were actively like, yeah, originally I wanted to get an abortion, but I couldn't, or I didn't, and I'm so happy I didn't. I don't know. I feel like those kids, those potential children, because at the very least you got to say that they're potential. Those potential kids should have a chance. I don't know. Maybe I'm on some pro-life shit and I realize it and I just don't want to admit it. I don't fucking know. But the point I'm making is, I don't. Women, be more responsible about who you have sex with and how you having sex, and protect yourselves. Men too, same thing. And let the states, and just be there in election day. This is just more reason for you guys to vote when it comes to elections in your current states. Getting free your mind, as they say. Is that what they say? I don't fucking know. You should say that if you don't say it. Gling, gling.